is President Trump really going to sell F-35's to the president of Turkey, Recep Erdogan, who has become almost Iranian-like? He has become Iranian-like in his threats against the state of Israel and against Israeli leader, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Is that really possible? Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg in Jerusalem with a YouTube exclusive for the Rosenberg Report. Look, President Trump and Turkish President Recep Erdogan have just had a summit in Ankara. It's a part of the NATO summit, and they met. And what Erdogan is coming out of the meeting saying is that Trump promised to sell 5 of the most advanced fighter jets in American history ever made, the F-35 stealth fighters. Erdogan says Trump promised to sell 5 F-35s to Turkey. And Erdogan says Trump always keeps his promises. Trump is saying that he's going to lift the economic sanctions that he imposed on Turkey when Turkey started buying advanced military hardware from Russia a few years back. That was crazy and showed just how unfaithful and untrustworthy Recep Erdogan is. Trump says he's going to lift the sanctions and that he'll consider selling F-35s to Erdogan. So as I report this, there's a bit of disagreement over whether this is really going to happen. But I got to tell you, this is a bad idea. This is a bad idea. I think a great deal of President Trump, and I love what he's done to rebuild the American military, rebuild the American economy, destroy the Iran nuclear threat and most of its missiles and all of its Air Force and all of its Navy. I love the strong U.S.-Israel relationship, the strong U.S.-NATO relationship that Trump is building. But this is a very bad idea to sell the most advanced fighter jets ever made by America to Turkey. Yes, Turkey's a NATO ally, but they are an ally threatening a NATO country, a European country, threatening to invade Israel, to destroy Israel, to reconquer Jerusalem, which was held for hundreds, almost 900 years under the Ottoman Empire, which was part of, which Turkey emanates from. Just listen to a couple of these quotes by the Turkish Foreign Ministry and by Erdogan himself. Just listen to this. This is the Turkish Foreign Ministry, a statement they put out, quote, "Just as the end of the genocidal Hitler came, so too will be the end of the genocidal Netanyahu." Okay? That's the Turkish Foreign Ministry calling the Prime Minister of Israel genocidal and saying Netanyahu personally is coming to an end. Then it says, just as the genocidal Nazis were held accountable, those who seek to destroy the Palestinians will also be held accountable. And the Foreign Ministry added, humanity will stand with the Palestinians. You will not be able to destroy the Palestinians. That's a recent statement from the Foreign Ministry of the country of Turkey, a country that President Trump says he might consider selling F-35s to. This is a country threatening to destroy Israel and its leader that it calls genocidal. Israel's not genocidal, but this is very belligerent language. But there's more. The Turkish president himself has threatened to seize control of Jerusalem, invade Israel, come to the defense of Palestinians in Gaza. At one point, Erdogan said, not that long ago, Turkey must be very strong so that Israel can't do these ridiculous things to Palestine. We must be very strong so that Israel can't do this. And just as we entered, and then he mentioned several cities in Armenia and in Libya, Syria, that Turkey has invaded, the military has invaded, Erdogan says we might need to do the same to them, meaning to the Israelis. There is nothing we cannot do, only we must be strong. Okay? These are just a few examples of incredibly belligerent and dangerous statements that the Turkish leadership has made, threatening America's #1 ally in the region. Now, Israel has defended itself brilliantly, courageously, and effectively from a seventh front war led by the Iranian regime, but of course Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthis in Yemen, and of course from terrorists in Syria and Iraq and the West Bank. And all through this war that began on October 7th, 2023, President Erdogan of Turkey has continued to threaten to use his military to invade Israel and take over Jerusalem and reconquer Palestine and liberate Palestine for the Palestinians, he says. Now, you have to understand, Israel can't afford to take these threats lightly. We couldn't afford to take the threats of the Nazis, Adolf Hitler, lightly in the 1930s when he was threatening to destroy, annihilate, liquidate the entire Jewish population. Too many people in Europe, too many people in the United States didn't take that seriously. It's just talk. Don't worry, relax. Adolf Hitler's not going to invade Europe, take over Europe, start World War II. He's not going to set into motion the death of tens of million people, including a Holocaust to kill 6 million Jews on the way, if he could, to kill all the Jews in the world at that time. It's just talk. Don't worry about it. Don't get your knickers in a twist. Don't worry about that. It's not going to happen. Don't worry. That's what people said in the 1920s and 30s, mainly the 30s, completely dismissing the threat of Adolf Hitler. The one who got it was Winston Churchill, who was not in power for the 30s. It was in the opposition. And then the British people turned to him to be the prime minister when Adolf Hitler and the Nazis began to do exactly what they said they were going to do, exactly what Winston Churchill had read, had listened, and said, Adolf Hitler is serious. Take him seriously. We need to prepare for war because war is coming under Adolf Hitler. Most people ignored him, Churchill, and Churchill was right. Even the US president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, ignored Winston Churchill for a long time until what happened? The United States got hit, attacked at Pearl Harbor by the Imperial Japanese. And that's what got the United States into a war in the Pacific, and then seeing that most of Europe was being lost, gobbled up by the bloodthirsty Nazis, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the President of the United States, got involved in Europe also. And of course, the United States, with the British and our other allies, saved the day. Thank God. Now we're in a position where another American president doesn't seem to be taking the threats of Recep Erdogan seriously, but Israelis are taking it seriously. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his cabinet, and even the opposition here in Israel, is taking very seriously what Erdogan is saying. You need to take him seriously as well, Erdogan. When you need to be praying, I'm going to be praying. I'm asking you to pray that President Trump would not start selling the most advanced military equipment the United States has ever made, the stealth fighter, the F-35, don't sell it to a country that, yes, is a NATO ally and should be trustworthy, but is not trustworthy because Turkey is led by a genocidal, megalomaniacal, radical Islamist named Recep Erdogan, who is making all these aggressive, dangerous, and belligerent threats against America's main ally, number one ally in the Middle East, Israel. That concerns me. Now, I don't think President Trump is a sucker. I don't think he doesn't get the dynamic in this region. But I think President Trump is trying very hard to rebuild a lot of relationships that were very strained under past administrations. And I think it was under President Biden that Erdogan saw the United States as so weak that maybe he should start buying military equipment from Russia, from Vladimir Putin. Well, that was insane. And it shows who Erdogan is. But in part, a lot of countries made bad decisions, started moving away from the United States when President Biden was in charge, because after he abandoned Afghanistan and allowed the Taliban to take over after 20 years almost of American fighting against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and the and everybody told President Biden, don't do it. Don't pull all U.S. forces out of Afghanistan. The country will collapse. Afghanistan, we wish they were ready, but they're not. The Taliban will take back over. Biden didn't listen. He didn't read the handwriting on the wall, and Afghanistan fell into the hands of the Taliban, radical Islamists. And as the Chinese saw that, as the Russians saw it, as the Iranians saw it, as other enemies of the United States saw the weakness of President Biden, they began to move. Russia invaded Ukraine, thinking, what's Biden going to do? What's the United States going to do? They're not going to do anything. Iran set into motion the October 7th attack by Hamas, by Hezbollah, by the Houthis, and ultimately by the Iranian regime itself. Thank God the Communist Chinese didn't invade Taiwan during the Biden years. And President Trump comes in and he's trying to help Israel, help our Arab allies deal with and neutralize with the Iran nuclear and military and missile threat, and rebuild all these relationships where our friends and our enemies were getting the exact wrong message, the message of American weakness. President Trump is trying to project strength. He's trying to rebuild America's strength, economic, military, diplomatic, in the world. Mostly he's doing a good job, but I think he's making a mistake here if he really does sell F-35's or F-35 engines or any other advanced military hardware to Recep Erdogan, the president of Turkey. One more point, super important. Erdogan actually has the biggest military in all of Europe. Okay? The Turkish military is NATO equipped, NATO trained, NATO armed. It has NATO strategy. And the Turkish military has not been in a major military battle or war in a long time. Yes, Erdogan has moved Turkish forces into Syria, into Libya, into Armenia at various points. They have some combat experience, and Erdogan is flexing his radical Islamist muscles, as it were. But so far, the Turkish military has been untested and therefore is in pristine shape. It's a huge military, bigger than any other country in Europe, and it feels like Erdogan wants to take it out for a test drive and launch a major war. And as Iran is becoming neutralized by American power and Israeli power, as Iraq was neutralized under the Saddam Hussein years by American and allied military and diplomatic power, Erdogan sees that he might have an opportunity to emerge as the #1 radical Islamist in the world, with the most powerful and largest military, and an America that might begin to recede. Having taken care of the Iran deal, the Iran situation, the Iran threat, that might just decide to move on and not be involved in the Middle East in the future. That's what Erdogan wants, and he would love, before America shifts forever away from the Middle East, Erdogan and the Turkish government want the best, most advanced, most lethal weapons the United States has. It would be a mistake for President Trump to sell them. Maybe he's just dangling them, trying to gauge Erdogan's intentions, whether Erdogan will come back into the pro-America fold from moving towards the Russians and, frankly, towards the Iranians. I don't know. I don't like it. Let's pray for President Trump. Let's pray that he understands the situation clearly and makes the decision not to sell advanced military lethal weapons to one of the most dangerous radical Islamists in the world. This is Joel Rosenberg in Jerusalem for a YouTube exclusive for the Rosenberg Report.